Good evening to everyone today. There's an incredible amount of pain running through our city and our country right now, and I understand that. I talked yesterday about my own pain as seeing the brutal murder of another black man who looks like me and the members of my family and so many of our residents right here in Baltimore. I'm angry and frustrated and fed up. I get it. I know that one way we've dealt with injustice is to take to the streets and protest. It's a fundamental right and one that I hold close to my own heart. So in Baltimore, I'm going to protect that right with every fiber in my being. But I also want to send a warning. The right to protest is a peaceful act that shouldn't be taken advantage of. We've all seen the images on our television screens and mobile devices of peaceful protests being overrun by individuals whose action cross over from righteous to the illegal. We will protect your right for peaceful protests. We will protect your right to peaceful protests. But I have zero tolerance for anything that approaches chaos and law breaking. I know there are lots of people in our city who want to make their voices heard and speak out against injustice, so I'm asking everyone to please respect them. I want you to demand justice. I want you to speak up for change. I want you to hold us accountable, but you must do it lawfully. Here in Baltimore, and I know this council president will agree, we are committed to reforms. I was the first elected official to call for a full investigation on civil rights into our police department. We're making tremendous strides. We're not where we want to be, and there's still more work to be done. I'm committed to that work, and I need the help of our residents to get it done. So I support your right to protest and speak out. It's a fundamental right of every American. But I can't have our city turn to chaos and allow real pain to get in the way of the many who are seeking justice and lasting change. We will not let outside influences come into the city of Baltimore and commit chaos in our city. We saw it in 2015. The citizens of Baltimore know how to protest peacefully. We don't want these agitators coming into our city to help burn and loot stores and leave the char of their demonstration in the city of Baltimore. We will not tolerate it, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Baltimore, I come before you today not just as your council president, but as a tired young black man. I feel you. I'm tired. No matter what we do, it seems that it's never enough. We can be perfect. We can do everything the right way, and we consistently have to worry about dying. Dying on the streets of cities like Baltimore and across the country, like we've lost a 16-year-old girl yesterday, a young man, Aaron Sutton, 2 days ago, that was a student at Howard University, dying at the hands of the police, like we saw with Mr. Floyd in Minnesota, like we've had here in Baltimore with Freddie Gray, or just dying from the injustice and the stress of being black in America. I get it. I'm tired. You're frustrated. I'm frustrated. We're all frustrated. I want you to let that frustration out. I want you to protest. I want you to let everyone know that you are going to demand change. But what I don't want is for us to allow people who have no roots in our community, who are not going to have to live with what happens in our community, to be the people that are the spokespeople for our community or leading things in our community to be the wrong way. We have to own our own community and understand that while change has come, we still know some far more change is to come in Baltimore City. We have to do that together. Let that frustration out today. Make sure that we're doing it in a peaceful way, but also don't let today be the last day. Show up in January in Annapolis when we're fighting for police reform. Show up in City Hall. Show up in your own community. Show up in our schools so that we can work with our young people and bring them up to be better in our city. We are tired. We are exhausting. Being black in America is exhausting. People died for us to get to the point where we are today, and we owe it to them to build on that, to work together to make sure that those people coming behind us do not have to live in the same broken system with the same consistent results over and over again. We shouldn't have people dying at the hands of the police. We shouldn't have children and babies being murdered on our streets. It's up to us to change all of it together, but we have to do that in a way that we know we can accomplish. We can do that not just with our mouth, but with our action, with our pen, with our organizing skills. Understanding that we know we had peaceful protests here in Baltimore last night. I want to thank all of those who protested peacefully. Thank the women and men of the police department who protected that right to protest. And we know we had an incident when an unacceptable behavior from a police officer that will be addressed. But we have to stay united as a city, as Baltimore, not anyone from outside. And if you're outside of Baltimore thinking about coming, do us a favor. Stay home. We don't want you here. You didn't come to Baltimore after 2015. We don't want you here now to try to play on the exhaustion, the frustration, the pain, and anger of our city. We can rise together. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. President. Now we will hear from Commissioner Harrison. And after Commissioner Harrison, we will have Reverend Kobe Little, Executive Director, NAACP, to speak. Then after him, Reverend Todd Urey. Then after him, Reverend Carter. Then after Reverend Carter, Erica Bridgeford, in that order. Everybody got that?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Baltimore Police Department has a contingency to deploy resources and to allow residents to exercise their First Amendment right and to keep them safe. We did it last night. We're doing it again today. And as we speak, we are facilitating and allowing and helping people to exercise their First Amendment right here on the streets of Baltimore. Our contingency plan calls for small and large gatherings, long-term and short-term demonstrations. Certainly, we are aware that protest groups may be growing, so we are in a constant state of planning and a constant state of adjusting. We are in constant contact with our local and state law enforcement partners, namely the Maryland State Police. We are further coordinating with our law enforcement officials at the local universities and other local jurisdictions should we need their support. Now, last night, I saw a video regarding an altercation between a woman and members of the Baltimore Police Department. I saw that video and I saw what transpired in that video. I ordered an immediate investigation into that incident by our Special Investigations Response Team, which is a component of our Public Integrity Bureau. Not only did we do that, but the officer has been removed from his assignment and on administrative duties until the outcome of that investigation. And so we wanted to make sure that we did swift and decisive action to make sure that we are not just accountable, but transparent during this time. All right, thank you. At this time I turn it back over.
Kobe.
Good afternoon. I'm Kobe Little, president of the Baltimore NAACP. I am pleased that we have this show of unity from a broad cross-section of community leaders. We thank the mayor and council president for calling us here to City Hall to speak to this city. Like many, I am outraged by the police violence, the senseless murders of black people across this country, most recently in Minnesota. I'm also outraged, as many people are, by the senseless violence last night demonstrated by a member of the Baltimore Police Department. Police violence must stop. We've spoken with the commissioner several times today, and I have every confidence that he has the right intentions and he has the right vision and the right plan to keep this city safe. But now, as I told the commissioner, every supervisor in the Baltimore Police Department must look every person under their command in the eye and ask them, are you emotionally ready for the challenge of the day? And the challenge of the day before Baltimore Police Department is this: to diffuse and to de-escalate. This is not a question of what a legal use of force is. More is at stake than an individual police-citizen interaction. We must stop this city from erupting. We must lead this city with love and with responsibility. And to that end, we've called on the police force to show us, to demonstrate clearly that the officers who are on patrol are embedded with officers who have mental health training, are embedded with officers who have mediation skills. We need to know from the police force that every interaction going forward, particularly today when there are scheduled protests, we need to know that every interaction will be engaged from a perspective of diffusing and de-escalating. Now, as citizens, we also have a responsibility to lead and to de-escalate and to diffuse. We must protest. We must register our dissatisfaction. And we must do it in a peaceful way. We must do it in a constructive way. After the protest, we must build. Whatever it is that you do well, we need you to do it now. If you're a member of the clergy, we need you to preach and pray and counsel. If you're a teacher, we need you to educate. If you are an encourager, we need you to lift people who are feeling traumatized by police terror and white supremacy. Baltimore, we must build and we must respond in a way that lifts this city and does not turn it over. So we call again on citizens to protest, but engage the police in a peaceful way. This is not the time to incite conflict and violence. This is a time to speak your mind and then to hold your peace. This is a time for us to build systems and structures that ultimately will defeat police violence and white supremacy and will allow for the people of this city to exercise self-determination. We do not need an invasion of the National Guard from the governor. We do not need an invasion of the state police from the state police barracks. What we need today is a Baltimore police force that respects the citizens of this city. Please, if you have negative interactions with the police, if you are concerned about a hot spot that may erupt, please reach out to the Baltimore NAACP. Contact us on our Facebook, contact us on Twitter, contact us on Instagram, and email us at naacpbaltimore@gmail.com. Thank you, and God bless Baltimore.
I heard what you said, Mayor. I listened to the names. And I thank you for convening us. 5 years ago, there was a real and palatable pain in this city. 5 years ago, all of the world's attention was on us. Freddie Gray had died in police custody and there were no answers. The systems that contributed to the issues that we were living out in real time had not been addressed, and the real pain of everyday people was expressed all across the city. That pain was real. That pain is still real. But what we cannot do is undermine the hard work that has been done since then. Are we where we want to be? Absolutely not. Is there more work to be done? Without a doubt. But what we have to decide as a city in this moment is that Baltimore intends to be the model and not the example. That we're going to show how we express our deep grief at the public execution of another black man on video. We should not shy away from it, but nor should we give false justification to somehow dismiss or diminish the work that has been done and the work that remains to be done. I pastor Douglas Memorial Community Church. I'm also Senior Vice President of Rainbow Push Coalition. This week, Reverend Jackson and I and other members of our team were in Minneapolis. We were there and we could tell. I knew I had had that feeling before. It felt very much like the day of Freddie's funeral 5 years ago. The pain, you recognize it once you've experienced it. But the most painful wounds are the ones that are self-inflicted. And what we don't want to do today and in the days to come is do our own work harm. I get being tired, but now's not the time to get tired. Now's the time to get determined that we're going to stand together in the midst of our pain and in our grieving, but we will not turn back the hands of time and the sacrifices made simply to prove a point. Yeah, let's stand together. In the middle of a pandemic, we still have to stand together. And what I would just ask is that we keep doing the work. Let's not stop now. Let's double down now and keep doing the work. Let's not shy away from this moment in time when somebody has to rise to the occasion and say, this is the model city on the hill. A few days ago, the president was here in this city, the same city that he mocked, the same city that he disrespected. We should not give his Twitter feed fuel. Double down. We got work to do. And let's lean on each other and not turn on each other. And we'll get through this together.
I am Bishop J.L. Carter, pastor of Ark Church, Solid Rock Church, also the president of the Ministers' Conference of Baltimore and Vicinity. There's a line that tells us in the Bible that a house divided against itself cannot stand. And certainly I believe that we have great leadership in our city. We support our mayor. We support the vice president. We support the president of city council and our commissioner and this entire cabinet as they lead us through this time. Where we are is a pivotal moment. It's a critical moment. What occurred in Minnesota is just so unfortunate, but we are better than that because we have learned from the lessons of yesterday. We love our city. We're concerned about our city. It's important that we all work together. Yes, we've got differences. Yes, we've got different perspectives, but it's important that we stand together for the present and the future. I'm convinced that as preachers stand with me across the city and beyond, I'm convinced that on tomorrow we will preach the message of hope. We will share the message of hope that others might know that God is still in charge of all that we do. I'm convinced we cannot go backwards, but we must go forward. We will continue to pray, we will continue to vote, we'll continue to do all the things that will guarantee a great republic. Blessings.
Good afternoon. I'm Erica Bridgeford, and I'm known for a lot of things, but I hope that when I leave this earth, I'm most known as someone who loved my city. And in loving Baltimore, what I want for my city right now is for us to pay attention to how much our pain matters, to pay attention to how much our anger is relevant and justified, to pay attention to how much the grief of generations and generations of living under violent systems of oppression impacts us the way it would impact any human being. It makes us angry. It makes us rise up. Pay attention to that, and also pay attention to how we can do it in ways that we live another day to fight. Something about the brain is that when people are mistreated, we immediately go into fight, flight, or freeze mode. When we run, people are okay with that. When we are paralyzed and don't have a voice, people are okay with that. But when we stand up and try to find ways to fight, that's when things get hard and uncomfortable. And that's when it is time for us not to just be there for our city, but to be there for each other. Pay attention to people who don't live here, who show up just to escalate things. Pay attention to people who do live here and only show up to sensationalize things. And pay attention to our justified anger. When you are out in the streets and you notice a brother or sister escalating, justifiably feeling all of their feelings, walk up to them, look them in the eye, and talk to them about the importance of us living through this moment. When things erupt, we can't control where it goes and who gets hurt and who lives through it. As somebody who goes into every murder space in this city to bless it, I don't want to be going into murder spaces around this city because people didn't make it out of protest at this time. I want us to live through it. You can't do the work if you die in the midst of a protest. Your voice can't be heard if it gets snuffed out in the middle of things erupting. So as someone who loves my city and loves every life in my city, I am asking us to use our anger, express our pain, feel our grief, and be there for each other in ways where we can de-escalate one another in a moment and channel our anger and our pain into things that are going to be productive for our city, move our city forward, get each other the help we need in the midst of our justified anger. But most importantly, please, let's live another day to fight.
Um, 5 years ago, the burning of a CVS did what a severed spine could not. It brought the attention and highlighted the injustices, the social inequalities that exist on an everyday basis to this day in Baltimore City. The bus stop benches in this city read the greatest city in America, but the reality is that there are two different Baltimores. The reality in Canton and Fed Hill and Fells Point and other pockets of privilege are not the same realities that line Pennsylvania and North Avenue, Greenmount Avenue, Monument and Rose Streets. People that live in those realities, the same realities that Freddie Gray lived, the same realities that George Floyd moved to Minneapolis to escape, are lived every day and are ignored on an everyday basis. So I ask all of the so-called liberals, all of the so-called people that are democratically running for mayor, don't ask us why we protest. Ask us why they continuously kill us in every city. Ask why, even in the midst of all this turmoil, when Baltimore was calm, there was no real protests that were happening in this city. Ask why, when that was happening, why a Baltimore City police officer, a black man, wound up with his balled up fist and knocked out a black woman that was in the middle of a mental health crisis. Baltimore City Police has not gotten better. The living conditions of black people in this city have not gotten better. And I know this because throughout the last few weeks, we fed dozens of thousands of meals to individuals who on an everyday basis were already facing poverty, lack of dignified food and nutritious options that this pandemic has only made worse. What I want to remind people is that I'm not going to ask protesters or people that are upset to be peaceful because the police are not peaceful with us. I'm going to ask the powers that be, the people who get due process, the police, when they encounter protesters, I'm asking the police to be peaceful. I'm asking the police to give black people the same rights that are given to us under the Constitution to protest. When those white folks were in Annapolis demanding that this state be opened back up, even in the middle of a pandemic that is disproportionately affecting black people at alarming rates. I'm asking that people protesting for the purpose of Black Lives Mattering, I'm asking that they be given the same opportunity. We are not here to hurt individuals. We are here to tear down a system that is not broken, a system that is perfected, and a system that constantly puts people that look like me and everybody else behind me at a disadvantage, And when we die at the hands of that system, nobody is ever held accountable. The most important thing I want to say to the protesters and everybody in Baltimore City is to remember that last week, the CDC said that Baltimore was one of the hot spots for a COVID spike. I want to constantly remind people, and we can't say this enough, Baltimore City is a predominantly black city where health care and quality of life are not accessible for the majority of black people in this city. We are the ones dying at disproportionate rates from COVID-19. This is a real global pandemic, and I hope that while we are protesting and showing our anger and our rage and saying that enough is enough, that we also display social distancing practices, that we also wear masks, and that we also remember that there will be spikes next week because of these large gatherings. But as long as we practice proper protective etiquette, that we can at least control it a little bit. Because when we go back to our communities, not only do we take the COVID back with us, but when we go back to our communities, we know that the police are still going to be a constant threat. And that it has not happened. Change has not happened far enough to where we have seen community policing inside of Baltimore City. So don't ask people not to be angry. Ask people to wear masks. Don't ask people not to protest. Ask the police to stop violently attacking us. Don't ask people to go home and stay home. Give them adequate housing. Baltimore, be safe, and I know we can be the example to show the rest of the world that even in the midst of a global pandemic, we can practice safe social distancing, we can wear our masks, and they can still hear our voices.
Before we take any questions, we're going to have a moment of silence for the family of Mr. Floyd. A few moments of silence. Thank you. Any questions?
Can you talk a little bit about the woman?
Can you?
Can you talk a little bit about the woman that was reported last night? What sparked that and the call session?
Sure. I wasn't there, so I couldn't answer that.
Thank you for the question. Number one, she was out there in the protest area last night. What we know is that there was an encounter, and the officers were attempting to get her to the side. What we saw on the video is what we know right now. There are two investigations. There's an investigation because she has been arrested, but she was brought to a hospital last night, and then there's an internal investigation because of the actions of the police officer. So beyond that, we can't go into what happened because we have two different investigations that are underway.
And is she facing charges?
I believe she is.
Anything else?
Thank you.